Thank you, Chair. I co-panelist Dr. Nand Kumar, Nand Kishore, sorry, dignitaries and my dear students. Let me at the outset thank the organizers, Professor Mohanan Pilli, for giving me this opportunity. What I'm going to speak today is basically on India's energy security in the Indo-Pacific. I thought energy is a standalone subject which possibly can be brought into this debate on discourse on Indo-Pacific architecture. So this is a paper which has already been published thanks to the editor of India Quarterly, Professor Chintamani is here. So it's already published in the current issue, and I'm just taking few points from the paper itself. Now, when it comes to energy security, I think to reduce dependency on fossil fuel market, India is pursuing a sort of a diversification in the Indo-Pacific region as well, while at the same time transitioning into what you can say the renewable energy. So for this, I emphasize that cooperation with resource-rich countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Mozambique are very, very important, at least in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, we must have seen many of the programs. We have seen significant progress in initiatives like National Solar Mission, National Green Hydrogen Mission, but India still faces challenges from the geopolitical competition which is going on in the Indo-Pacific region. And there are infrastructural and technological gaps in transitioning towards renewable energy. So, strengthening regional partnerships and scaling renewable energy development are very, very critical for reducing import dependency and also achieving sustainable growth. Having said that, let me come directly to the debate on Indo-Pacific as to what is the geopolitical and economic diversification when we talk of energy sources in Indo-Pacific. I think in most political documents, energy security normally refers to the threats to supply system and the geopolitical risks associated with short-term disruptions of oil and gas distribution at an international scale. So this is what basically I mean when I say energy security. In India's Indo-Pacific concept, and India has adopted a very broader vision which extends from the shores of Africa to those of America. And inclusiveness, openness, ASEAN centrality, and unity, they all lie at the heart of Indo-Pacific region. This is what the Shangri-La speech also mentioned about the Prime Minister's Indo-Pacific vision. So, keeping that in view, India's strategic engagement in energy-rich countries in the Indo-Pacific like Vietnam, Mozambique, Indonesia reflect a sort of a country's broader efforts to secure energy resources from multiple sources. I'll come one by one to start with Vietnam. Now, India's engagement when it comes to Vietnam in South China Sea is a very notable example of India's diversification strategy. The energy cooperation of India with Vietnam in South China Sea is the most significant as it brings value both in terms of energy also in terms of strategy. So when we see India's ONGC Videsh, which is the overseas arm of India's state-owned ONGC, signed an agreement to explore the development of deep water oil and gas resources with Petro-Vietnam. In Vietnam's exclusive economic zone, please understand, OVL actually owns 45% stake in blocks, in various blocks, and offshore block in Nam Son Basin of Vietnam, which was purchased in 1988. So, there are companies with which ONGC Videsh is trying to engage with. But the problem is the SCS has a significant geographical and strategic location in the context of international shipping as well. So the region is expected to have roughly 11 billion barrel of untapped oil and roughly 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. There is an island dispute also between Vietnam and China in South China Sea, as China claims sovereignty control over the sea, an exclusive economic zone of Vietnam. So India is a non-claimant and a non-coastal country in SCS, South China Sea. The region is still a substantial strategic, economic, and geopolitical interest for India. So, over the years, if we see, India has made efforts to increase its engagement with Indonesia also, both bilaterally and within the framework of India-ASEAN energy partnerships. There have been, and we know that Indonesia is a vital partner for India as it sits as at one of the strategic confluence of Indian and the Pacific Oceans, and controls a large part of the Strait of Malacca alongside, and it sits actually at the Strait of Malacca. The third important aspect, which I think we also wanted to discuss, was Mozambique. Mozambique is interesting. Its location in the Western Indian Ocean actually places it within a region of growing geopolitical and economic importance, and there is an abundance of hydrocarbon reserves, strategic sea lanes of communication, stretching up to the Gulf of Aden. So, when we discuss India's Indo-Pacific energy policy, I think we should also keep this in mind, that resource diversification, maritime security, and geopolitical balancing should be brought in a very unified framework. Mozambique, as I said, in the Western Indian Ocean actually secures long-term LNG supplies, while at the same time countering China's growing influence and also protecting vital sea lanes. So is Indonesia central to the Eastern Indian Ocean, which offers hydrocarbon reserves and strategic leverage over a Strait of Malacca, which is again a choke point, which is extremely critical for Asian energy flows and China's vulnerability. Vietnam, again, though is a contested South China Sea, strengthens India's diversification and also the Act East policy, while reinforcing its support to what we can say the rule-based maritime order. So together, when we see, they form a sort of an interconnected arch of energy and strategy, reflecting how India's Indo-Pacific energy security framework operates as both an economic diversification plan and also as a geopolitical counterbalance to China, ensuring that energy flows remain secure, accessible, and aligned to rule-based maritime order. Though there are a lot of challenges, but India's energy security, therefore, if we have to understand within the Indo-Pacific context, I think can be best understood, and this is for the students that primarily from a theoretical realm of realism, neo-realism, or rather the geopolitics. Energy is viewed not only as an economic driver, but it is also a determinant of military and strategic power. So, due to the anarchical system, what we are facing today, US in Venezuela, Greenland, Canada, the anarchical system, the supply disruptions and the vulnerabilities of importers are prominent. And to overcome this, I think diversification and decoupling are very, very important. And therefore, India needs to diversify its reliance on traditional partners and also find new partners in the Indo Pacific region. I think natural gas should be treated as a transitional bridge fuel, I would say. While the nation's long term objective of expanding domestic renewable energy capacity through technological innovation, strengthened international partnerships with technology efficient nations uh, should be the core focus. Finally, let me conclude by saying that India's ability to balance this diversification, economic growth, and environmental sustainability will determine not only India's energy future, but also a role as a pivotal actor in shaping in the Indo-Pacific's evolving energy landscape. I'll stop here. I'll be very happy to take questions. Thank you.